Welcome to Making Whole, conversations on faith, mercy, and justice. I'm Benjamin, and I am joined again by Damien for a collaborative, curious, and consequential conversation. We wanted to, in real time, model what it looks like to have these kinds of conversations that we believe are needed in the world. So many of the conversations that we have offline. And so we just wanted to bring that into an online space. And so for every guest that we have on the podcast, there's going to be an episode like this, which means if you have not listened to episode 2, which is called Presence, then hit pause, go back, listen to that conversation, and then rejoin us here because then that'll just bring some dynamics to this conversation that you would not otherwise have the context for. And so with that, we're jumping right in on this episode. So Damien, what's good? How are you coming to the conversation today?
What's going on, man? I'm doing well. I'm doing well today. A week ago, I was just recovering from a week of being sick with the fam. The whole fam went to Chuck E. Cheese and got strep throat. So, better. I'm doing better this week. And yeah, I think I've just had some really good time with friends, just on the phone and chatting and coming into our time grateful today.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, how about you?
Yeah,
How about you?
I'm kind of a whirlwind this week in the sense that I'm out of rhythm. My kids have been home for spring break, 4 of them, and so trying to do a little bit of work, a little bit of be present to them, which is always complicated. And but I am feeling really grateful because yesterday we live in Smyrna, Georgia now, which is a little suburb outside of Atlanta, and I really love when I feel like I'm in a small town. And so we walked to the library and excuse me, when we got to the library, the bell was ringing because it was 10 o'clock. There was a train going by. There were like dogs in the field. And
you were in a sitcom.
And then I saw somebody in the library that I know, like another softball coach that we coach against. And so it was so fun. Of just like, I love this part of my life and this part of my story. Beautiful. Where there's just there's just an honest simplicity to it that pulls away some of the pretense I think that we put on unnecessarily, or I put on unnecessarily, I'll say. So I'm feeling like, pretty grounded and just excited to chat.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So
ended a poem.
A poem. Yeah. I did write some haikus yesterday for anyone interested, talking about grief.
Hey, we need to drop that in here. We need to drop that in here. So cool.
One was called Grief and one was called Butterfly. So, maybe I'll drop those somewhere on Instagram or something. So people can see them.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about this. Making whole isn't so much about what the person's doing. And I think that really came through in the first episode. Like you've set out on this journey of like, this is the kind of art I want to create, or this is what I want people to experience. And it almost exceeded my expectations in the sense that it's not so much about the facts of what a ministry or what a nonprofit or what a person's doing in the world. It's really about kind of what's going on underneath them, what's going on in them, what's happening through them. I know that was true of my experience in starting Peace Prep, as well as in leading at Cafe Momentum. Was just like what was happening in me was way more powerful than whatever I was trying to do in the world. And so I just felt that in this conversation. That was something that felt really true to me. And I'm curious for you, like, what were you feeling? What were you sensing as you were listening to that conversation?
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like you guys were getting at something that is not just about his organization, but just a way of being in the world Um, yeah, so much of my life I felt like touched this conversation. Um, but I really, when I was thinking about coming to have the conversation with you, I was thinking this conversation makes me want to ask who, like when you were thinking of presence, does someone come to mind?
Mm,
Is there a person that comes to mind, and like who are they, and how did their presence impact you? Because it definitely did for me, but the question came up that I wanted to ask. So
mm.
please, if there was somebody.
Yeah, I think it's been um many people in many ways. There's a couple big stories that I'm thinking about. One is my wife. I mean, I think that's gonna come to the top of my mind. So we've been married, it'll be 20 years this summer, which is
Congrats.
more than half my life technically. And so when I think
Crazy.
about just somebody who's been like a constant in my story, somebody who's been present to highs, lows, ups, downs, joys, failures, all of it, like that's the person that immediately comes to my mind. And the
Yeah.
story I'm thinking of is when I found out that my dad had cancer. And I don't, my mom called me. We were watching TV or something. I was on one couch. She was somewhere else in the living room. And I don't know if even needed to say anything for her to notice first that like something was amiss, right? But then I think she did ask me, whatever was going on. And then as I kind of like whatever said a few words, she just laid on top of me, like just put her body on top of my body.
Mm,
And I will never forget that as like the most loving and
mm,
whole thing someone's ever done for me, to
mm,
literally say like, with my body, I'm with you in every sense of the way. And I just remember the way the weight felt. I remember the way that her embrace felt. And I just remember how safe I felt to just go to the depth of the feeling and emotion that I was having. Like,
yeah.
because I knew I was anchored, right? Like I know, like sometimes I think for me at least, I don't go to the depth of an emotion because I don't know where I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Absolutely.
in that moment, her presence sort of created a safety in me to be able to say like, whatever depth I go to, I won't go alone. And I'll be able to
Yeah.
come back from it because somebody is with me. And so,
Yeah.
I think that's the one that's like top of mind for me anytime I think about presence,
That's
and what
beautiful.
like a particular kind of presence specifically.
Right. A physical, tangible experience of that love.
Mhm. Mhm. How about
That's
you?
that's so good. Uh, you know, so it's my grandmother is the first person that comes to mind. Um, my abuela, and um she just was the most like non-judgmental,
Mm,
at least towards me, at least towards me, non-judgmental, uh, just loving kindness. I mean, loving kindness embodied. And there were just so many times. I mean, she was just the person I would look forward to calling, and was always warm and always curious about how I was doing. Um, and I think that even, I grew up with her in my house. So the relationship that we had, was definitely a lot closer than maybe some people have with their grandmothers. And so she was definitely like a second mom. And even when we didn't live together, I think that feeling of presence was so real with my abuela. Like I could always call her. She was always happy to chat, and somehow she still kept that presence
mm,
with me. And um Yeah, there's a ton of there's probably a ton of stories that come up, but I think that's the major thread, for me, is that she was just a really loving presence that just shaped so much of how I think about love, how I think love should be patient, how I think love embraces us no matter what,
Mm,
right? Like there wasn't like even if I was wrong, I know I can go to my grandmother,
mm,
right? Like even if I was wrong, I know, but I'm fine. I'm fine there. And I think that gets at that same reality that you're describing, right? It's safety.
mhm,
The safety that comes from that type of presence. And I think I've, tried to embody that in my own life,
mhm.
in the way that I've loved my family and my friends. Um, yeah, providing just a safety. I think that's a good framework.
Yeah, I think there was that a lot of what I realized in this conversation with Ian, and even this conversation that we're having, look, we're on the edges of this kind of big idea, which is that, presence matters, but it's actually the kind of presence that matters, right?
Yeah.
Like just to
Yep.
physically be in a space with somebody doesn't automatically mean sort of XYZ take
Mm,
place, right? And I think when you're thinking about making whole or making repair or healing or whatever we're on the fringes of here, like the kind of presence matters. And so to tie it back to the idea of like a consequential conversation, it's like what ideas are shaping the way I'm present. And there were some ideas that came through from Ian that I thought were really good that we should definitely talk about. One
mm,
is this idea that love is change, that it's not
peace.
fixed. And I'm just going to say, if you listen to that conversation, um, part of the way I'm able to show restraint in conversations like that is because I know I get to have this conversation. So it's all
Mm,
by design because
mm.
my mind goes like everywhere with that kind of a
Well,
thought.
yeah, tell us like where when you hear that, love is change and it's not fixed. Where does your mind go?
So I immediately went to another idea like that, which comes from Saint Teresa of Avila and her writing on the dark night of the soul. And I immediately went to this time in my life, not too long ago, a few years ago, where I started out of nowhere having panic attacks and ended up being diagnosed with panic disorder. But during that time, I was doing a lot of reading on Dark Night of the Soul and really was, I mean, I don't use the word lightly. I was tormented in in my being, in my mind, and in my body. And so, as I was reading this book, Saint Teresa of Avila talks about this idea that God is nada, God is nothing, or God is no thing. We can't
Mm,
define God, and that's what came up for me when he started talking about love changing and not being fixed, and God changing, and our experience of God changing. And I think what came out of that season for me was this idea that the tighter I cling to these ideas, the farther I feel from God. And the more I'm open to believing that I can't define God or I can't make God so small that I can understand, digest God, the bigger God
yeah,
gets, uh, the more I can settle into that reality. And so for me, that's where I went immediately, was to that place of realizing like a deep resonance with a real experience of
mm,
a God that, uh, has changed in the sense that like my thoughts about that God have changed, and that's okay. One of the things that was really I was really wrestling with in that season was that I had been in Christian communities that everything was fixed, and I could no longer consent and agree to some of the things I had previously consented and agreed to. And so I needed some new images of God, and I needed some new images of love. And I feel like those came through some really ancient ideas, some really old ideas, and some really, I think, safe paths to travel down. But
yeah.
that's what came up in me when he started talking about that.
That's so good, man. That's so good. Because I think you're even describing something that if for the average Christian who is navigating their life and coming up against experiences that are challenging their beliefs, most of the time they're not examining the beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
They're examining themselves because they feel a type of way, and because it's like, why is it so? Am I doing something wrong? Right? Like, and what I hear you saying is maybe we should be more open to what our experiences are teaching us
Mm-hmm.
and allow our beliefs and and how we think about things to be open to changing and evolving with our experiences,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not like saying our experiences are the only determiner or are the only thing that's speaking to us about what we believe, but it needs to be
Mm-hmm.
a major teacher, you know, as a part of our process.
Yeah, I say this thing to my kids sometimes when they're like bickering with each other. I'll say this like, truth is truth is truth, right? Like if something is true, it's always true. And so there are things that we can know. So I'm not like going down this rabbit hole of like we can't know anything and all these
Mhm,
existential reality. Like no, I'm saying there are things we can know.
mhm,
But what I'm also saying is I think there was somebody I was sitting with a few years ago who said something to me that was really powerful. They said, you know, I was raised in a faith community that taught me to believe that um, the beliefs that the community has are like you have to agree to them. Those beliefs have always been the beliefs of the community. They've never changed, and they will not change. And uh, if you just live a little bit and read a little bit and discover a little bit about history, you would know that that's not true, right?
right.
Like the things that uh maybe we'll call it majority or evangelical Christianity in America believes are not the things that the church has always believed, right? And so
Mhm,
um you almost like it's almost like if I've been to the headwaters, right? And I've experienced if I've drunk from the tap, I've been there where the water's coming out,
mhm,
and my experience leads me to believe something different, then like I've got to explore that. I've got to examine that. I've got to understand uh where is this coming from, right? And
mhm.
so yes, we have source material, right? We have text, we have historic text, we also have
Sure.
tradition, but we
Mhm.
also have our experience. And I think it's sort of those things working together that
Yes.
that is what I hear someone saying when they say love has changed or God has changed. I don't hear them
Yeah.
saying like this isn't something we can ever concretely understand, but there
No,
is an abstract reality that we have to be comfortable with.
yeah, and I think like but I hear it's so clear when I hear this image, because for me I've just been spending time, whether it's in meditation or just practicing mindfulness throughout my day and practicing breathing. One of the exercises in meditation is viewing your mind as like the sky
Mm,
and all of your thoughts like clouds that will pop up and they'll be in your face and they might even take up your whole view, and then you just let it be there until it's not right.
mm-hmm,
It's always moving, and not trying to identify with any particular thought, but allowing those thoughts to be there and also allowing those thoughts to leave, because we can more so identify as the sky. And
mm,
I believe when I'm hearing that and I'm hearing you talk about God being changed, I'm hearing that idea, right? That God is like the sky. There is so much that we can point to and say, yes, God is like this, and yes, we saw God be like this, and yes, we had this experience here, but also time is passing. Also, we've never been here in history. Also, these people have never been here in history, and there's an experience of God to be had that we can witness to that may not be something we could point to before.
Mm.
And I think that we need to be ready to witness to that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, the scriptures themselves sort of allude to this idea that God is doing a new thing, or can be doing a new thing. Like, and even Jesus sort of in his parting words to the disciples sort of says that, right? Like, hey, even greater things you're going to do. And here's this power I'm going to give to you. And we do get to see some of what that power worked out looks like in Acts and in the New Testament letters and things like that. But I do think we have to be open to the idea that God could do something new, that God is dynamic, that God is changing,
Yeah.
which is also on the edges of this other idea Ian shared about staying with the story and not escaping it, right? It's like, okay, wait, if it's a story, we do kind of understand, because there is a picture painted in the historic text of what the end of the story is. So we have a trajectory or a path to follow. But stories are alive, as far as I know, and I think we've then got to be alive within the story. I wonder if you can talk to that a little bit about just like how you're feeling alive in the story of God, or how you get your sense of like groundedness in something bigger than just like an individual life and story.
No, yeah. When I'm thinking about how I participate in the story, for me, I am often trying to remind myself that I'm not separate from everything,
Mm,
right? Like that I'm not just a separate, but that my story is tied in with the story of the world, the story of the people that live in this world. And so yeah, I so much of me thinking about my place in God's story is saying, okay, where have I been placed?
mm-hmm,
How am I being in that space?
mm,
Am I being a beacon of love? Am I walking in line with justice?
mm-hmm,
And a lot of ways for me lately is thinking about how I show up as a father,
mm,
right? For Elena, and the story that she is going to grow up believing about herself and her place in the world, and helping sh- uh give room for her to discover like that she has so much value just in existing, right?
mm-hmm,
The odds of us as individuals existing in the world are crazy. Like, and so the fact that we do exist is pretty special. And really wanting to believe that, like, it's so easy for me to believe that about other people, especially my daughter. I could
mm,
talk about her forever and talk about all the beauty and the goodness that she brings, but I'm also trying to practice that for myself, to say like, I bring a unique perspective and a unique way of loving, and a unique way of seeing and speaking about the world, and wanting to lean into that and not dismiss it or disregard it, but to own it as, oh, it's not just a job someday that I'm
mm-hmm,
I'm waiting to step into, or it's not just like someone to recognize. It's me recognizing me,
mm,
because the universe, God, has recognized me so much that I'm here.
mm-hmm,
So may I participate in that. That I'm
mm-hmm,
that I'm here. May I participate in what's in me, and bring that out into the world. I think that's where my mind goes when I'm thinking about staying with the story.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah,
What about you?
I appreciate you saying that part about a job we're waiting for, because I think in our culture today we can get so concerned with sort of the destination, or like where is it going, and rather than sort of like who are we becoming
Yeah.
along the way, like what are these experiences of life making me,
Mm.
what am I choosing to allow to form me. Those are such important conversations to be around and be immersed in and be aware of, because I think when I think about making whole, it's like we can all make whole because God has made us to make whole. Like that's how we were created. That's in our DNA. And that's not about
Yeah.
the job we have or the task we
Nope.
have to complete. That's about who we are as a healing presence in the world. And so I think that's really important. For me, staying with the story is about reconciling the parts of my story that feel dissonant. And I think starting to come to a deeper awareness of the reality that um, the difficult parts of this story are part of the story too. They
Mm.
don't need to be excluded in order for the story to be good. They actually add a depth and a dynamic to the story. And so I think I've spent the last, gosh, call it 15 years, um, learning how to befriend and accompany grief, um, not on purpose, but
Yeah.
just because that is the conditions I've been living in, and I think, um, trying not to exile those parts of myself, trying not to escape those parts of myself, but trying to say, hey, where I've experienced deep loss, deep disappointment, deep longing, uh, could these be invitations to a deeper knowing of myself, of God, and of others? And I think there are days where I'm like, man, I would certainly not choose these sets of circumstances. Like if I
Yeah.
if I could go back in a time machine, I wouldn't be like, yeah, let that person die again, or let this relationship fall apart, or let this difficult reality be exposed in me. I wouldn't do that, but at the same time, I wouldn't trade these experiences. Like
Right.
who I've become because of these things is really important to me. And so I think that's what staying with the story for me in this season of my life looks like, is being present to all the parts of myself. Um,
Yeah.
and what that's
That's
doing.
that integration. That's that integration that y'all were talking about.
Yeah. And what it's doing is, I hope what it's doing is it's, it's allowing me to be the kind of healing presence in the world I think God has created me to be. And so, um, when I think about my job, right, when I'm trying to like explain to my kids or to people who have no context for what spiritual direction is,
Mm.
like to think about a vocation or a job that is to be a listener, right, to be a holy listener, a sacred listener, um,
Mhm.
that is required some sort of uh welling out in me, right, some digging out in me, to be able to be the kind of a well that can be present to a person in a place of need, or of grief, or of joy, right,
Mhm.
but to be able to sit with somebody. I'm in a season right now where I'm taking on a lot of new clients, and so when a new client starts, um the first session, we always make space for me to hear their sacred story. And so they get, you know, a session's an hour long. Um, I usually tell them however much of that you need to share your story, you can have it.
Mm.
And when I started doing this work, I would tell people 20 to 25 minutes. I sort of taken that time limit off now, because I've come to see some people need a whole hour. Some people need
Yeah.
two sessions, because there's so many important moments they've had with God that they've had no one to sit with them and look at them and listen
There
to
it is.
them and
There
say
it is.
all of that matters, every
Yep.
bit of it, like without interruption, without pause, without judgment. uh all parts of you are welcome here. And then what that opens in people, yeah, I mean, it's
Mhm.
just miraculous. It's miraculous to
That
watch it.
I mean, I think that right there, right, is what allows so many people to stay with their story,
Mhm.
because staying with their story by themselves activates probably a part of their story that tells them that they're alone in it, and that
Yes.
it's too much for them, and that it shouldn't go down that road. And I think when you are describing a space for someone to engage their own story, but with company
Mhm.
and with a loving kindness that's going to walk with them with empathy and bless them
Mhm.
in the midst of their story, I think that's the type of stuff that allows people to enter in and stay with their story. I think a lot of us can feel, yeah, just limited by what we're able to do alone. And that's, I think that makes sense. We're not supposed to.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a defect in us, right? I don't think that we're supposed to be able to handle whole capacity of our story on our own. I think we're made to have that limit so
Mhm.
that we can rely on each other and find something together that we couldn't have done it on our own. And I think there's something beautiful there that to tap into that, you know, unfortunately, I don't know that many people get the opportunity to really do that.
Yeah. No, that's true. Like again, in every sense, like it's true in the neurobiological sense. Like science would tell us that even our bodies are made up of complex systems and parts. It's true in the sense of our experience of the world, and I think
Mhm,
it's just true and good to know that none of us were meant to hold our stories alone or live in our
mhm,
stories alone. And I can definitely see, like when you were saying that, there are moments in my story where I can absolutely see uh an opportunity where I said something heavy or weighty about myself, something that would otherwise potentially create shame.
mhm,
And to have a person not flinch, right? Not
mhm,
change their presence towards me, even
mhm.
perhaps take a closer step to me.
Right.
That, I think for me, that changes everything. That changes
Yeah.
everything about now what I predict to be true, right? Because that's what we're
Yeah.
all doing. Like,
And what you can do for yourself,
yes, yeah,
because you don't
we're
even want to
all
take a
living that
step
out.
towards yourself.
Yeah,
Sheesh.
absolutely. I don't want, yeah, I want those parts of me to go far away, to be locked away,
Yeah.
and I don't want to think about them or know them. But I think it has been in the knowing of those parts of myself that I've begun to be more human and more alive, and more whole, right? And that, I think that's the trajectory I want uh I want to be on.
And that's so practical.
Hmm.
And like it's such a like in the details thing, right? Like when we're thinking about how love moves and operates, it's not like, I think oftentimes we can think that love is abstract.
Hmm.
It's this big flowery, like this big but when you describe it, it is when your wife embraced you
Hmm.
and she laid her physical body on yours,
Hmm.
right? It's when somebody shows up for you when you know that they were busy and you had a lot of things going on, but they were like, I need to be here and I don't even have anything for you, but I'm gonna be right here.
Hmm.
And I think about, yeah, so many instances where if I have to describe what love is, I remember a moment when I was a child and I asked for hot chocolate from my mom. We were driving home from somewhere. It was late, and we were don't make too much fun of me. We were gonna watch the NSYNC concert
Let's go.
when we got home,
Frosted
right?
tips.
Let's go. But it was late, and so my mom was like, "There's no way you're drinking hot chocolate." And and I just was so sad about it. But anyways, we get home and we start watching the Instant concert, and I end up falling asleep, and I wake up probably like an hour later or whatever, and I look over, and next to my bed, my mom had brought me hot chocolate.
Mm,
And I just remember, I still remember, I was really young, right? I was probably like 6 or 7, but I remember that moment because it was like, wow, she really loved me like this.
mm-hmm,
And it just meant so much. It could be a cup of hot chocolate, um, and it meant the world, right? But I think it's in those details that we find love to be very practical.
mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's good. Which I think Ian said that is like you can't love someone abstractly. This whole idea of making whole involves actually getting in the details of the story with somebody, and I think obviously we see that in Jesus, right? That's kind of the whole deal is like God puts on a body and then shows us what love looks like, shows us what it is to get in the mud and heal someone and protect someone that's vulnerable and speak to someone that is outside of their mind and bringing them into their mind. Like we see all of these really powerful tangible acts of love, all the way to a self-sacrificing love that says like I will even die, if that's what it takes. And so I just think there's something really powerful in the story already that kind of gives us a blazed trail to go down if
Yeah.
we're willing. Like it is a courageous path to engage in loving another because it also comes with the betrayal and all the other things. But
Ish.
um, I think what I heard Ian saying in the conversation and what I hear us saying is like, uh, it's worth it. Like that's something I always want to communicate to people is like, hey, if I'm going to be a credible guide, like if we were going to go, um, on a hike to a waterfall, like I kind of want to go with somebody who's been before. And before we even go, like I want to know, is it going to be worth it? Like, is it going to be worth it to go up this mountain and traverse what we might have to traverse um, in order to go? And I think I want to say to people, like, the work of love is worth it.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that's the question,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that you're hitting right on it. Like, is it worth it to be vulnerable again? Is it worth it to trust the process again? Is it worth it to stay with the story? Is it worth it to change our mind about a thing and to
Mm-hmm.
follow the new information that we have? Um, yeah, I think that is the vulnerable space. Brene Brown is coming to mind as we're talking about this because I think she was um, the person that I felt encouraged me the most to to really lean in, to not lean back, or to not be hardened
Mm-hmm.
by the difficulties of the story. Because I think that's part of the wrestle. It's like when you are present with people and when you are really walking things out, everything doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the story isn't always telling a good chapter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like the whole chapter could be bad. It could be
Mm,
bad. And I think in those times, it's saying the story's not over.
mm-hmm.
It's saying that we're part of a bigger story.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you don't know what that story is, right? Because I think for Christians that can be a very clear statement, but for people who aren't followers of Jesus, it's like, what is that bigger story? Yeah, the whole universe is telling the story.
Yeah.
Every part of the universe that's flourishing and bringing about goodness is telling the story that there is still more goodness to come,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And wanting to believe that and trust that and trust that, like, the same way that we go to sleep believing that the sun is going to rise,
Mm-hmm.
and birds are going to be chirping outside, and we're going to feel warmth, like, all of those things I think are part of the story that we can trust and say, like, the whole universe is declaring that goodness is still coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even in the midst of of a chapter of our stories that might feel terrible, what does it mean to believe that goodness is still on its way?
That's really good. I mean, I think it's hard for us to sit with that, like, on the way, right? Or seeing something as, instead of no, as not yet. Like, I think those are really difficult things for us to do. It's difficult for me to do. I think. I mean, the silly example that comes to mind is Netflix. Like, I prefer watching shows on Netflix because they're typically complete. Like, I'll wait until it's like the whole season's there or whatever, right? And then we'll do this thing very often where if an episode finishes on a cliffhanger, we'll start the next episode, like, to see
Mm-hmm.
how that moment resolves. And then it's like,
Yeah,
okay, cool, now we can go to bed. Like, we'll
right.
finish it tomorrow,
The
right?
suspense is gone.
Yeah, but I think that, like, that speaks to something in me. I think that speaks to something in a lot of people, which is like, we don't like the moment that's unresolved. We
Mm-hmm.
don't like to sit with the biggest, weightiest question of like, but what happens next? In this conversation with Ian, I heard it sort of crescendo when he was talking about um, this question of like, what would it take for you to leave your home and the language you know and go on a trip that could kill you to a place where people will not welcome you. And I felt that in me of like, I don't know that I have the capacity to hold that question, you know, uh,
Mm-hmm.
or not yet. I hope I'm gonna develop that capacity as but that question, like, was weighty to me. And I don't know how many people have gone back or just like stopped with that question of like, what would it be like, to
If we were
experience
honest
it?
about it.
If we're honest about it, like,
Yeah.
uh, I just, it's beyond what I'm capable of imagining. Because I have kids and I have a home, and so to think about what would it take for me to like leave this and go to a violent land, it's like, oh, hmm. And also um it's also in my story, right? Like, my grandparents were immigrants, on my mom's side. On my father's side, my grandparents were sharecroppers, and so they were part of like a migration that happened in this country of African Americans to other places. And so those ideas are sort of like in me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and those are parts I'm still like trying to get to know and understand of like what what that's about. But I don't know. What came up in you when you heard that question?
Yeah, I mean, I can't hear that and not hear an act of faith. I
Mm-hmm.
can't hear that and not hear that an immigrant that came to this country with no no sure things, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the process of getting here is not sure. What happens when you get here is not sure. How long you could be here is not sure.
Mm.
Even if you don't understand it, even if you're someone who is like, I don't understand immigration, you have to at least witness to it as it's an act of faith
Mm.
to move from one place and put it all on the line. That's that's more faith than most of these people I'm seeing at church,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
I
that's
just I just
that's
can't
right.
see it. I just can't see it as anything other than an act of faith. And so when we're having the conversation around immigration, I'm just like, that's faith. These are people of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have to be Christian or even describe, like, even have language for it. What they're doing is the act of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it even identifying with other communities. I see it identifying with the queer community
Mm-hmm.
that has an expectation on them on where they're supposed to live in society.
Mm.
And they have to go through a journey of saying, I know you have these expectations for me in my life. This is the reality about who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to move
Mm-hmm.
from one place. That journey.
Mm-hmm.
That's an act of faith.
Mm.
I just hear it and I say, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely act of faith. Christians that I know that have deconstructed and don't want to call themselves Christians anymore, but are still inspired by themes of love and justice
Mm.
and peace in the world and being one with. I'm like, you guys are still people of faith.
Mm-hmm.
Because this movement, moving from what's familiar and comfortable and what seems safe into a land that you don't know, and you don't know what's gonna come about when you get there. I think anytime we see that happen, it's an act of faith, and we have to honor it as such.
Mm. That's so good. It's so good. I think that is a really consequential idea, right? That challenges deep held beliefs about what faith is or what faith should be or what faith has to be. Um, but the trust that it takes to walk away from something known into something unknown, just at a base level, seeing that as faith, I think is a really powerful idea. Like a really, really powerful idea because
Yeah.
um, you're right. Like we want to excuse our exclusion of people by demonizing or vilifying or putting them on the other side of some fence because they no longer consent to play the game we want to play it.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing we cannot do is say, well, this person has no faith. I don't think we can.
Can't say that. You
Or
can't say
not
that.
honestly.
Yeah. Not with integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I think that's the dissonance. The dissonance is when you move from thinking about a thing and talking about a thing and ideating about a thing to sitting in front of someone that is different from you and witnessing to that person's life.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had way too many conversations about people who are not sitting in the room,
Mm-hmm.
and people feel so free. It's kind of like I feel like there's a name for it, but when you're driving in your car and everybody feels the freedom to talk crazy, to wave their hands out, you know what I'm saying? Imagine being in the Starbucks line
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, and someone like bumps you a little bit or something, and then they start yelling like they do in the car.
Mm-hmm.
They would
Mm-hmm.
never, right? Because it's like, oh, we're right here. But with the space, with the option not to really engage you, but to just like throw out all of my thoughts and words and all the things without it actually impacting me, receiving that and then responding to me. We feel the freedom. We feel the freedom to say so many things, and I think that presence, sitting with people, being friends with people, sharing meals with people that are different from you, that have a completely different lens than you do, it transforms how you think about these things that we thought were just topics, but really they're humans and
Mm-hmm.
lives. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's part of what so I'm a big fan of Romans 12, and I'm always curious about all the things something can mean, right? I'm not saying it means it or doesn't mean it. I'm just saying what could it mean? And when Paul says be transformed by the renewing of your mind, That word
Mm,
transformed is the same word for transfiguration, right?
mm,
Like, so I allow your mind to become
mm,
something else, right? But what it was always intended to be. And when you're saying that, that's what I'm thinking about is like, oh, what is it like to allow our mind to become what it was always intended to be, just
mm,
free and open and clear
mm.
um and in the sitting with a different experience, how is that a part of like allowing our mind to be transformed?
Yeah,
How does that come into play? Because one of the next things he says in there is let your love be genuine.
yeah,
And unmasked is sort of, if you look at the
mm,
non-hypocritical, and hypocritical referring to the actors, the Greek actors, right, who would wear masks. And so let
mm,
your love not have masks, right? And so there's something here, I think, that I'm hearing in what you're describing of like, hey, when
mm.
we sit with other people who think differently than us, when we see someone who has a faith that's different than our faith, uh, how does that a part of the process of my transformation, right? Not just
Yeah,
theirs. Like I'm not what if I came to a space with somebody who thought different than me, not to change their mind about a thing, but open to my mind being changed by a new
yeah,
experience, right?
yeah,
Uh that is such a dynamic idea to me. Like that's such an exciting proposition to me of like, could we live that way? Like, could we
yeah,
live with the reality that difference can actually make us whole and not fracture us?
yeah.
Like difference doesn't have to be division. Um,
Hmm.
it could
Hmm.
be uh, developing something in us.
There's, sheesh, bro. Yeah, I'm all about this. I'm all about what you're saying. There's a couple different images that are coming to my mind, right? There's the image of like eating the fish and leaving the bones,
Mm-hmm.
right? As a Caribbean, it's like, hey, we like some good fish. But we know that there are things that we can't consume, right? And that's okay. But you can still enjoy the fish.
Mm-hmm.
And I think yeah, sometimes we are more comfortable in the categories that we are familiar with, um, and with the people that we're more familiar with, and the people that have aligned views with us. And I think it's a good habit to just to not be in an echo chamber,
Mm-hmm.
right? To not be in a space where you are only hearing one opinion, but that you hear the multitude of opinions, and you allow that to inform your thinking, and you allow that to shape you. um I'm also thinking of this. There's a Buddhist idea around teachings, and there's an idea that there's at least like 48,000 uh teachings that would lead to what they might call nirvana, or
Mm-hmm.
what Christians might call the kingdom, right? And but one of the sentiments is it would be a shame for our kids to have only the same amount of teachings that we had.
Mm.
That the true gift is exploring not just the 48,000 teachings that we might have, but how many more are there?
Mm-hmm.
How many more teachings that we have not yet explored, that our kids will explore and discover, and that will continue to grow, because how beautiful would it be for there to just be more and more ways to get to the kingdom, to get to nirvana, to experience oneness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I love that sentiment. I love the idea that there are just more and more ways, especially as history continues to go on, with more and more humans and personalities, and different perspectives that come into the world. May we experience just more ways to see that beauty, the truth behind, like, life and reality, and be able to witness and say, yeah, this is good.
Mm-hmm.
This is good.
Yeah. And I think what I love about what Ian's talking about, what we're talking about, what Presencia is embodying in the world is that at its core, or very simply, the invitation to a meal or the invitation to presence is a first act. Uh, it's not a last act. It's a
Hmm.
first act. It's a first step. And what I want people to hear, hopefully, in our conversation and in the conversation with Ian, is that, like, what is the first act you're being invited towards, right? That makes the world more whole. And how are you present towards whoever you encounter when you take that first step? Because I think that sort of begins to set the trajectory for the kind of work we do together, for the
Yeah.
kind of whole we're making, right? Um, I think one of the interesting things to me that I wanted to talk about was this idea Ian alluded to, that staff, supporters, people sort of around the context of the work are not required to share a faith. They're not required. There's no um, like Christian mission statement here. There's no they're not like leading Bible study in Spanish or trying to um, have conversion metrics. And I think that was unintentional. Like I didn't on purpose say, let's have our first guest be somebody who's bringing a perspective that's maybe some people wouldn't even consider, right? But I think it's beautiful that that is what happened, that you're in a conversation and something that literally, it's not important to me in the sense that it didn't hit my radar of like, oh, I should interview somebody who has a Christian mission, because that's the only way you
Right.
can make whole. Um, so anyways, I think that's interesting. I
Yeah.
think that's interesting that they're not requiring agreement, that they're not saying, uh, you know, pray this prayer, agree to this creed, do it this way, but whole can still be made, in my
Hmm.
opinion. What,
and
what do
and
you
it
think
doesn't have
about
to be
that?
a barrier. I think that's what I think that's what's beautiful about it, is that they can still hold, like Ian can still hold his faith with good conscience,
Mm-hmm.
and not feel like it needs to get in the way
Mm-hmm.
of the relationships that he has. I think that's the right posture
Mm,
to have when you're entering a space. I mean, if our faith starts becoming a prerequisite for relationships, I think
mm,
we're doing the wrong thing with it.
mm,
But if it can empower us to get outside of our box, to be curious about the light that we're witnessing to in the person in front of us, and be able to see that goodness and call it good, I think that's when it's doing the right thing in
mm-hmm.
us.
Yeah. So this is what just came up in me when you said that. I'll be curious if this resonates with you. I think it's been harder for me to hold my Christian faith with good conscience in Christian spaces.
Hmm. Hmm. Say more.
Well, so you said, he can hold his faith in good conscience in this space. And
Hmm.
immediately my thought was, when I've been involved in, whether it be Christian ministry, uh, church work, that's been more difficult
Hmm.
than in some spaces that I've been in where agreement about Christian faith wasn't the galvanizing point. I'll say it
Hmm.
that way.
Right.
So I've had a couple of distinct leadership experiences over the last however many years, right? One is leading a school that I started that had an explicit Christian mission and vision. It was explicitly Christocentric is the word I would use. And what I was, I think, trying to do in that space was say, how can we be center set thinking and not bounded set thinking? So in other words, if Christ is the center, and you're willing to and want to move towards Christ, then great, let's walk together. Whereas bounded set thinking would say, I need you to believe these things about Christ, or I need you to agree to this set of rules.
Yeah, stay within this.
In order to be in, right? Inness is defined by the boundaries rather than inness is defined by the center. Like, are you going towards Christ? I'm going towards Christ. Let's walk, right? Wherever you're coming from. And without being like dramatic, that was hard. That was hard to do. There were not necessarily with the people that I was working with every single day, but I think the people around the work, right? Whether that be funders of the work or decision makers about the work because of the way nonprofits are structured. Because my way of followership of Jesus didn't align with, and so almost like on the inside, I was trying to be center set, but then there was this exterior that was bounded set. And because we never really were able to have that conversation and recognize that difference and come to some agreement about it, it became very difficult to live out my faith in that context. Okay.
And
so then my next experience in leadership was not in a Christian context, just a regular old nonprofit, right? And I remember the board chair asking me, as I was being interviewed for the role, like, hey, you're going to have people of different faiths on this board. How do you feel about that? And coming out of the other experience, I was like, where can I sign up? Like, I would love that, you know? And I found in that space, it was easier to be authentically myself. It was easier to authentically live out my faith. There was a Muslim board member who said to me, like, listen, I'm a Muslim, and I told this board when I looked you up on LinkedIn and saw you wearing the collar, saw that you were a priest, like, that's the kind of person we need leading this organization. And I was confounded by that because I could never imagine a Christian person in America saying, I'm going to choose a Muslim to lead an organization. Right. I just can't imagine that. And so I'm not trying to throw stones living in a glass house, but I am saying
a different posture. It's a different posture.
I am saying a little bit what my experience of the world has been, that living out what I authentically feel Christ is calling me to live out in the context of life and ministry. I have felt unwelcomed more in Christian spaces than in non-Christian spaces. That has been my experience.
And I just hear prophets not welcome in their hometown. That's what I'm hearing. I think there is a different expectation when you're among people of the same faith that I think it's easier to come with an expectation, right? Like, oh, I know what you're supposed to say, and I know what you're supposed to believe, and I know you're supposed to move, and I mean, yeah, I tend to have a posture that just wants to, I don't know. I've just never felt the temptation to want to have everyone be the same in their faith. And, there, I can think back actually to times, early on in my walk with Jesus that I was reading, from theologians that would articulate that exact thing, actually, that we need to believe. This is what Christians should believe, right? Like, and that it's hearing that language all the time. And so I think that can get into you, at some point. But it is more to me like tasting all the different cuisines in the world. Um, that is like witnessing to uh all of the different types of goodness that comes from all different types of people and walks and religions. I think we can find people of faith, yeah, in all of those different walks, and being able to just experience them for who they are and not allow our own biases to get in the way of that witnessing, I think is so important. That's how you get rid of prejudice. Um that's how you get rid of systems that continue to uphold racism, right? Like, you have to begin to remove those barriers that inform us about people before we're actually seeing people.
Mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's the work. That's the work of making whole, right? And I think we've gotten to talk about so many dynamics about that in this conversation, and we got to talk about so many dynamics of that with Ian, and so I'm came to this conversation feeling grateful. I leave this conversation feeling hopeful. And I think as a spiritual director, one of my main roles is to like kind of help people figure out what to pay attention to. And we're listening for that invitation together. And so I would name an invitation I've experienced in this conversation is to look for the faith in others, period.
Say it for the
not
people back.
not not
Say
the
it for the people in the
not the
back.
faith that's different than mine, or the faith that I want to gawk at, or but just look for the faith in others.
Yeah,
That's the invitation I feel from this conversation, is to look for the faith in others and allow
that's good.
that to begin. uh it's kind of like, I imagine it to be what it felt like for people who had only watched TV in black and white, and then one day there was color, right? And now we've got 4K. And so uh, I imagine that dynamic happening in me, that my soul would be able to see in 4K, like all of humanity and all of the connectedness of this world and all of the beauty and goodness that God has designed, if I'm willing to look for the faith in
Yeah,
everyone I encounter. I sense that.
that's the
And I
word.
just offer that invitation to others to look for the faith in those they encounter. What how would you answer that? Like, what invitation have you sensed in this conversation?
Honestly, I don't know if I could say it better than that.
Mm,
And even just the simplifying of that, right? Of just the faith. Yeah, witness to it,
mm,
um, name it, and allow it to impact you and um, evolve you from where you're at to where you're headed because you're with this person.
mm.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
so good.
good.
Well, thanks for having this conversation with me. It's been
Yo, I
really
appreciate it.
rich and good. And friends who have listened along, thank you for being on this journey with us. If there are um, things that have come up in you, we'd love you to share those with us. You can
Please.
comment on the things we post. You can email me, Benjamin at sozojustice.com. But we'd love this conversation to take on whole new dynamics as we continue on in this series of making whole. So wherever you are, however you can, may God bless you in your making whole.